over to you to explain what are you going to talk about.
Thank you, Diana. Let me share my screen. Can you see it? Great. So this presentation is to get more accustomed with the technical part of the household energy performance, which is in the beginning we will see some terms that are used in the household energy consumption aspect. Then we will see the procedure that we have to follow when conducting a simple energy audit. And finally, we will see some simple energy efficiency measures and practical tips. All of us are more or less accustomed with the term of kilowatt hour, which is used when talking about energy. So 1 kilowatt hour technically is the energy needed to heat 21 liters of water from 10 degrees to 50 degrees Celsius. So if we want to consider how much 1 kilowatt hour is, we can say that an electric convection heater that has a resistance of about 2 kilowatt, if used for half an hour, will have an energy consumption of 1 kilowatt hour. So the typical non-energy efficient home in Greece, I'm referring to Greece because I live here, so I know more about the average energy consumption of homes, is about 250 kilowatt hours per square meter. So it's relatively high compared to other countries of such climate. So we can see on the right that heating is the greatest the use that consumes more energy in a household. So this means that it's very important to focus on heating when talking about energy efficiency in a household. The most common heating sources of energy is wood, used in combination with a stove or fireplace that can be open, or it can be connected to a hot water tank and distributed in the household via using radiators. Also, electric is a source of energy, and it can be used in two ways, either using resistive heating with convection heaters or radiating heaters or thermal storage heaters, or air-to-air heat pumps, where heat is pumped from the inside to the outside of the household, or the opposite. So in Greece, the fuel distribution is that the heating oil is about the 45% of all heating sources, whereas electricity is second with 27%, and third is wood with 17%. Other sources of energy is the natural gas, which is typically connected with a furnace connected to hot water tank and radiators, or district heating, where it is available, where fuel source is typically fossil fuel, or of course heating oil or LPG, again with a furnace connected to hot water tank and radiators. If we want to have an overview of the heating technologies that are most commonly used, we can say that for wood or biomass in general, the most important features are that it is normally used in a direct form. There is a stove in the living space, or it can be, as I said previously, in a central heating system. One special meter of wood, which is a cubic meter of wood of logs stacked one on another, which means there is some air between these logs. It generates about 1,575 kilowatt hours. Of course, some things that we need to point out is that there is a carbon monoxide suffocation risk if the chimney is not regularly maintained, and of course a fire hazard if the stove is faulty, or if the if the fire is in the if the space is not protected, then the fire is easy to go into the living space. And next, for the electric thermal heaters, of course, it's something very simple to use. You can take advantage of lower tariffs that are usually found in the night. And again, there is a fire hazard if devices are faulty or if heaters are covered. Regarding the heat pumps, we can say that there is a big advantage of the coefficient performance that can range from 2.5 to newer devices until 4, which means that for 1 kilowatt hour that is consumed, 2.5 to 4 kilowatt hours are pumped into or outside of the indoor space. There may be some devices that are not so efficient in lower outdoor temperatures, and this should be taken into consideration. And regarding the cost, we have here some indicative values, but of course, with the energy crisis, this can change very, very quickly. For now, our electric power in Greece ranges at about 0.22 euros per kilowatt hour, and for the night tariff at 0.13 euros per kilowatt hour, and the wood at 0.035 euros per kilowatt hour. Regarding the natural gas, regulations currently allow only condensation boilers to be sold, which have higher requirements for chimneys. And often this means that customers may need the chimney reconstruction. 1 cubic meter of natural gas generates about 9.4 to 10.2 kilowatt hours. Some safety implications are that some gas boilers may need minimal water pressure to operate properly, and these water reactors can cause issues. And of course, the carbon monoxide suffocation risk if the chimney is not regularly maintained or placed in an outside space. Regarding district heating, of course, it's a very economic way of heating technology, but in many cases, the billing methods may be confusing, and this may cause reduced customer trust in these schemes. And of course, the main problem is that we cannot cover all areas. At least in Greece, it's very small percentage of the country that can be covered by district heating. And finally, for heating oil and LPG, of course, a local storage tank is required, and this may pose some risks, again, some dangers, because this is a flammable liquid. 1 liter of heating oil generates about 11.86 kilowatt hours, whereas 1 liter of LPG, 12.80 kilowatt hours. And of course, the fire hazard that I mentioned before. Regarding the building thermal envelope, some things that we need to have in mind when visiting a household, we have to have a general overview of the building envelope. It is very important to understand if there is thermal insulation in the envelope, if walls, roofs, windows, or floors are insulated. And it's very important to avoid thermal breaches, that we will see what is a thermal breach later. Also, it is very important to understand that the material that the thermal envelope is built from, because if we have a more thermal mass, this means that we have more thermal inertia, and this makes the space more thermally passive, which is something that we want in the case of a house. So we need to understand if, for example, is a home built of stone or of wood. This creates much difference in the way this envelope reacts to the thermal to the movement of thermal flows. And regarding the heating system efficiency, it is very important to understand if it is being maintained regularly, if the set points that are used are correct, which may reduce a lot the energy consumption if they are correct, And of course, if the heat is distributed equally or is concentrated in one spot. And next, the air tightness is very important. If there are gaps on windows or doors that can cause drafts and thermal energy leaks, this can have implications in the energy consumption as well as the well-being of the tenants. And there are, of course, the extraction fans that are normally in place in the bathroom and the kitchen. And we should take into account if those are leaky. Next, it is important to understand if the orientation of the house, of the envelope, is good or not. In Greece, if we have a south orientation, this results in more solar energy gain, which in the winter is something that we want. And if we have eaves above the windows, this can reduce the summer sun from entering the house and creating an overheating situation. And of course, the more compact the shape of the house, this means that less surfaces are exposed to outside conditions, and this results in less energy losses. And finally, when we have a detached house, it is evident that we'll have more losses than if we have neighboring dwellings that are already heated as well. Thermal bridges are those parts of the envelope where there is a connection between the interior and the exterior of the building, where the insulation is interrupted, such as balconies that may interrupt the external envelope insulation, concrete balconies. And this means that when we have high concentration of water vapor in the inside of the house, this can create mold, and we can probably from a short visual inspection, we can understand if there are thermal bridges in the house where cold spots create a condensation that creates mold. Let's move on to the simple energy audit. A goal of the simple energy audit is to gather some key information in order to determine if what is the existing energy situation in the household. So it would be less extensive than an energy audit, for example, to issue an EPC, but it should be enough to understand what is the general situation of the house and the household, and it should be enough to propose meaningful measures in order to reduce the energy costs and increase the quality of life. A simple checklist that we should have in mind when visiting a household is to gain information about the heating and cooling systems, about the energy performance of the building, about the state of the energy appliances, the energy behavior of the tenants, if there are safety considerations to have in mind, and to do the energy bill analysis in order to gain some insight on the actual energy consumption of the household. The first step is to collect this data by examining the relevant information about the energy consumption, by asking about the energy use of the house, the heating types, the fuel used for heating, for cooling, and for the devices, for the appliances, and of course to understand the general situation about the energy performance of the building envelope. If it is insulated, if there is a roof that is uninsulated, what about the chimney, the thermal bridges, if they are there. And then we can make we can gain some insights about the consumption patterns and the significant energy use. We should find which appliances, which part of the envelope, which is the most significant in terms of energy use. And then using also the POWERPOOR toolkit, we can present the results to the beneficiary, a report of their situation regarding energy consumption and energy poverty. Some points to keep in mind in that when considering the heating system, Of course, we need to see what is the heating type, the heating fuel, where the emission devices are positioned in the living or working space. If there are heating devices that are close to cold walls that can act as heat sinks, and what is the heat distribution in the room, and what are the service periods of the heating system. Regarding the building energy performance, we need to understand the wall composition from the inside to outside, with a focus on the thermal insulation that may be or may be not there, and the thermal mass properties. Detect potential thermal breaches. Regarding the windows and doors, we need to inspect if there is air tightness, and what is the type of the glass, if it's a single, double, or triple glass type. And finally, the ventilation openings, to see if there is airflow in the kitchen and bathroom extraction fan openings. Regarding the energy behaviors, to ask the tenants what are the biggest energy pain points, because they know better, of course. If there are parts of the house that feel cold to them, and they may avoid activities because of the cold. And in southern countries, of course, this may happen also because of the heat during the summer. If there are body parts that feel cold in the winter, if there are any energy poverty alleviation schemes that they can be enrolled, and that this could help them alleviate their situation if they are vulnerable, and how long they are living in the property, if they are the owners or they are renting the property, and if there is any renovation planned soon. Regarding safety, the state of the chimney is of main importance to avoid carbon monoxide hazard. If there are all the electric heaters that or is obstructed the airflow around the heaters, and if there is if the electric installation is in good condition. Some useful tools that, of course, engineers is easy for engineers to have them, is a distance meter, the kilowatt hours meter, a photo camera, or an infrared thermometer that can help make this visit more interactive. Some communication tips when performing a household visit is that we should always have in mind that the beneficiaries could be elderly people or people with various health problems. We should make a very positive first contact. We should smile and introduce ourselves, explain at all times the purpose of the visit and what will happen during the visit. We wait for us to be invited before entering the house. We should make clear that the visit is free of charge and we're not selling something. It is best to be up to 2 persons when visiting the household, and of course to adapt the communication based on the status of the beneficiary. We should leave our contact details and inform them about the next steps. Always respect the dignity of the household and their privacy and values. We should not share the private data with third persons. We should listen to the beneficiaries patiently, but if something becomes not comfortable, we should allow ourselves to leave and inform the mentor if any problem occurs. So moving on to the energy efficiency measures and practical tips to reduce the total energy consumption. This does not mean that we should reduce the comfort. We should try to improve the comfort, the thermal, visual, and comfort, and the air quality. We should define significant energy users and replace them with energy efficient ones. We should reduce their operation time by using timers or by using, for example, the heaters during the night if there is a lower tariff during the night. We should try to find the thermal bridges or holes, like windows, like doors like walls that are not insulated, and try to patch them using insulation stripes or reflexive foils or thermal insulation. We should try to use optimally the natural lighting and the sun radiation by adjusting the room orientation and use and using shading devices. And of course, we should protect the house from overheating in the summer by using blinds, shading devices, trees, wherever possible. The simple measures will show quick results and will have a small initial investment, but will also have a low impact. The optimal measure is the one that will have quick results, has a lower investment and higher impact, and has a short payback period. But of course, we should always have in mind and tell that to the beneficiaries that energy renovation is a long-term approach. Let's now see an example of a retrofit of a household from 250 kilowatt hours per square meter to 15 kilowatt hours per square meter annually. By maximizing the solar gains in the heating season and the thermal insulation, that is, of course, the most cost-effective measure in an uninsulated building, by maximizing the use of wasted heat using heat exchangers and the use of renewable sources, we can achieve an energy consumption reduction that is very significant. And of course, we should try to minimize the solar gains in the cooling season, the air leaks, and the thermal bridges. And we should try to optimize the thermal mass that slows down the temperature change. And this is something that we want in a house. Large investments can be the thermal insulation of the outer envelope, the replacement of windows and doors with new energy efficient ones, the replacement of the heating system with a new and efficient one, and the use of solar thermal systems. And some small and medium investments are the replacement of old light bulbs with new energy efficient LED ones, the replacement of old appliances with new energy efficient ones, draft proofing, and water saving devices. We see here some examples of the payback period and the cost of the investment cost of some measures. For example, for thermal insulation, the cost ranges from 40 to 45 euros per square meter for mineral wool or EPS on the outer side of the wall. And this means that the payback period can range depending on the energy used from the household, can range up to 15 years. And the expected lifetime is 50 years. If we insulate the roof using mineral wool, this is a very low, relatively low initial investment cost of 10 euros per square meter, and a very short payback period of 3 to 5 years, depending on the energy use. Regarding the outer envelope, we should take into account when proposing measures. Of course, an expert should always be consulted when proposing energy efficiency measures. That we should avoid moisture problems by selecting the correct materials that will have low vapor diffusion factor. We need to have high vapor diffusion factor in order to avoid moisture problems. Good ventilation is crucial, and insulating the thermal bridges is also very important to avoid moisture problems. When we use natural materials, this increases the sustainability by reducing the embedded energy, and they also have normally better values with regards to vapor diffusion. Energy efficient windows and doors have a relatively higher investment cost, that is even higher than that shown here. It depends from the material and the actual characteristics of the windows, but we can say that the PVC windows are the most economical to install. And windows generally have a higher payback period, but also it depends on the type installed and the energy used from the household. And they have an expected lifetime of 50 years. Regarding the heating system, it may be a higher investment cost, but it is also a very short payback period in years, because it is very important the heating system used and the efficiency of the heating system for the energy consumption of the household. We have here expected lifetimes of about 15 years. And of course, another example would be to replace a standard wood burning furnace with a high efficient rocket stove one. And finally, a solar thermal system that could be installed instead of an electric boiler could save up to 2,000 kilowatt hours in a household. with an initial investment cost of 3,000 euros, which may be even less if only used for hot water, and with a payback period that could range from 5 to 10 years, and the expected lifetime 25 years. And of course, we can also propose a PV plant for own supply with net metering. For example, a 4 kilowatt-hour plant could have an initial cost of 3,500 euros and could have a simple payback period of 9 years and an expected lifetime of 25 years. That's all from my side. I'm available for questions if you have some.
Thanks, Eleftheria. I was going for the checklist, and I'm thinking, is there someone who would feel perfectly comfortable saying, I'm fine with all the boxes? It's really very explanatory and shows the complexity actually of what does it mean to really feel in full energy comfort. I personally couldn't check all the boxes, that's for sure. But I really found it very interesting. Do we have some comments or questions? It's quite a lot of content, so that's also why we share the material afterwards, but maybe some initial reactions from participants.
And of course, it's somehow a little technical, all those details, but if for someone who does not have an engineering background, it is very useful to have an overview of the technical aspect of the energy efficiency in a household. And this depends not only on the envelope and the house itself in terms of construction, but also from the tenants and their behavioral patterns and how they use the spaces and the systems and their patterns. And of course, in these terms, the POWERPOOR toolkit can help a lot in understanding all these details.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the checklist that you shared, that's also very key. So obviously, if we have an engineer who became a certified mentor and supporter, he might take a few extra steps because of his knowledge. But the idea indeed is that everybody can give it a go and give an initial support and indication on where should people seek help.
Sure, and the social aspect is equally important with the technical and the thermal aspect as well.
Yes, yeah. I can maybe jump in because Dor was the one who has done model 2 for this. It's really technical, but when we are helping to the local Center for Energy Poverty, we are always using the tables that we show in if he want to put 10 centimeters of isolation, 20 centimeters, and how much it costs. And of course, it's different in each country. So Eleftheria showed Greece prices in Croatia are different. So this is something that if you want prices for your country, you can check it with our pilot partners, and they can give you for each of the country the prices that are in your country.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And yeah, okay, so the chat is open. As mentioned, please feel free to drop questions, and also hopefully we'll have a bit of time at the end of this module to open the floor. But so thank you, Eleftheria. If you could stay with us for at least another half an hour in case there are some questions.
Sure, of course. And I think I wanted to point out is that now with the energy crisis, it's even more important to focus on these aspects because the payback periods are shortened actually, and it's easier to save using these kind of simple or behavioral changes or smaller measures.
Yeah, that's a fair point actually, because before maybe that will be a barrier for many people thinking, oh, it will take me 15 years if I want to have my money back. But now when we see skyrocketing prices, that period is definitely shorter. Good point. Anna-Marie, I leave the floor to you, yeah?
Yes, I can share my presentation. I don't have screen. Okay, I can.
Yeah.
Okay, share.
Yeah, we see it. Just
yes. So for after the Eleftheria and more technical, I will show you the policies, but not in a boring way. I will show you through the energy crisis what changed, at least in Croatia, and then we'll show the best practices that are in Croatia, but most of them are horizon projects, so it can be projects that are going on in your country. So this will be overview of the things. So I will just skip this part and go to the policy part that I know it's always the boring one, but it is the other side of the technical help, because you can have all the devices to renovate your house, but if we are talking about energy poor households, they need the grant scheme to do the renovation because they cannot not do by themselves. So we need to have some background from the policy background. So this is the slide that shows how as we are part of European Union, how some of the directives are implemented and what is the pyramid of the laws that are implemented in your country, in your policies. So this is the one of the Energy Poverty Handbook that is from 2016, and some of the policies, when we were doing analysis, we go through them and put them in the brackets. If it's financial intervention, it is energy efficiency program, and the new one, energy poverty, just came in 2022. I have a link after the presentation. I'll put it in the chat. So there is new Energy Poverty Handbook, and I will give you the link so you can check it out, what has been in the new ones and how the policies are maybe reflected in different types. Of course, in POWERPOOR, we can use it to maybe double check, see does it something change. But still, these four brackets are very good to identify policy in your country. So when we are doing that, also for the policy, it's important that all the levels of society are involved, and this is something that maybe national governments are the mostly responsible, but dealing with civil society, like all of us that are in POWERPOOR, or universities that are also included, we can, with especially the analysis that we are doing through the POWERPOOR project, we can better up our policies. So this is the overview of some directives that are actually changing now, and because of the energy crisis, the new ones are coming out. They are mostly actually more in energy crisis, and they are more in terms with energy poverty. So if we are regarding energy poverty as a definition, it's now time, and it's really focused on that, not in a good way, but still it is coming into more in the directives, and that means that all the countries that are in part of the EU need to implement it in their own policies. So this is the overview. Most of them for now are mentioning energy poverty, which is not the case in national policies, but still we need to implement it. And I will show, like, this is the overview of the 8 pilot countries that in 2020, when we are doing the baseline assessment, what is in each country, that like Bulgaria has 4 policies that are mentioning at least maybe vulnerable customer or energy poor household. And what we have done is one really big baseline report, which can be also shared with you when we share the presentation, because it's public available. And these 8 pilot countries have really done really good mapping of all the policies. But of course, with when we have done it, it's COVID situation only there. But now with the energy crisis, a lot of things change. And this is why I will go through policies in Croatia and said, like, this is the policies that change because of energy crisis. Like the first one, immediately, it was known as energy vouchers. And it was like 26 euros before March of 2022. After the March of 2022 and the start Russian-Ukraine war, they double up the price. So it is like around 50 euros. but it was still not enough. And from the October of 2022, it went on 70 euros. So this is like energy voucher, but just to paying electricity. And then after October, they decided not be to just for electricity, it could be for the heating. And actually they are giving the voucher that is 70 euros, but people are using it for the food, not only for the paying the bills. So it's not that kind of control, but you just you got 70 euros and you can pay the bills, which is intention, but you can use it for whatever you need it in that moment. We have in Croatia definition of a vulnerable customer, and this is something, or protected customer, that we have through our policies, but mostly the thing that is interesting is that the voucher for the 70 euros that is paid to the beneficiaries is from the solidar compensation that you have on your bill, and it's paid not by the citizens, but it's paid by a Croatian electricity company. And this is how they are putting around, I will need to calculate in euros, it's about 30 million euros. So it is really big money that are implementing in state budget. And from that, there is going the money for the energy vouchers. And it only goes to the people who are under this Social Welfare Act. And so you need to be somewhere in their system to get that. So it's not only for all the people, it's like about 70,000 customers in Croatia that are getting that help. So you need to have to be part of this system. So this is what's changing during the energy crisis. And in 2021, we get also two programs for renovation of house. One is for the private homes, and one is for the multi-apartment buildings. And it's extension of the project programs that were from 2014 till 2020. And it was really popular programs. You have a public calls under that programs, and there was the grant scheme that was offered. It was big, but it was also small for all the interested parties that want to apply. And when they open that public call, it's called the fastest finger, because it all went in like 16 seconds. So it was really, really popular. And in 2020, they decided to open a public call for energy poor households, because the last public calls were more for a general public, and you can get 40% of your renovations, 60% or 70%, depending on the area where you live in Croatia. And in 2020, they decided to open public call for energy poor households, and it was 100% subsidized. But it was not so much successful as the general public. They spend 50% of the money that they allocate for that public call. And it's mostly because they didn't cooperate with the Center for the Social Welfare and didn't know the criteria that they put it in the public call was too strict. So they couldn't find people who could apply and that are beneficiary of their social welfare system. So they need to change. We are hoping that there will be, especially now in energy crisis, more calls with 100% subsidized for energy poor households. So this is something that was going on in Croatia regarding energy crisis and regarding energy poor households. We are also hoping that under the Croatian INZEB that we will have energy poverty program. So we are only having like public calls or something, but having program with detailed measures and detailed grant scheme and detailed criteria who is energy poor household, then we will have public calls that will be successful. So this is what is going on the maybe national level and the national policies in the regarding best case practices, what is going on in Croatia that are more doing NGOs, university. This is something that I will give you the overview of the project and some of the ideas we use in POWERPOOR project. So this is a fair solution for a better community. That was also a project that DOR was partner, and we were visiting 100 households, and we were doing energy audits, something that Eleftheria mentioned to you. We used all that in visiting these households. It was 100 in city of Zagreb, and we have some analysis that said that 82% are reducing energy heat. And if you know that it is from 2020, you know how much will be now with energy crisis. And 100 households that were targeting these projects, they were from social welfare centers. So they are beneficiary of some of the energy vouchers or something like that. Another project is on the sunny side. It's from the Green Energy Cooperative. It was something like an idea to gather all the people that can help with the project application and mostly installing PV system. They are really good in that area because their first project was 2008 with UNDP, when I was in Croatia, and they have this rural electrification where they put PV system on the roofs of the house that are off the grid. So they didn't even been connected to the grid. So this is their first project. Now they are more in helping general public, but when there is a public fall for energy for households, they can help with applying to those citizens who need the help. REACH project was also a project that DOR was part. We have been doing also energy, simple energy audits in like I think about 200 households in the region of Petrinja. This region is also interesting now because in 2020 there was an earthquake 6.5 and a lot of houses are now damaged, and we are hoping maybe to get back on this project that was in 2015, but to see what is happening now with those households. Do they need only energy renovation, or they need I don't know, new houses because it's destroyed in the earthquake? Also, there is a project through the Knowledge to the Warm Home. Actually, when you are doing something good in some area, like in the city of Petrinja, then all other cities around heard about that project. So this is extension maybe of the REACH project, because we from the area of Petrinja, we went to the county, and they were interested to do also some energy audits and education, something like you supporters and mentors. And that time we call them energy auditors. So this is something, when you're doing something good on the local area, the other local authorities will be interested. And in the beginning, when we were doing all the field analysis and using energy audit through the house, we realized that we need some kind of tools. We were using that on only pen and paper, and we have really extensive calculator putting in Excel tables. So we have this project of designing tools similar to the POWERPOOR project. So if you are, I think that Eleni present you POWERPOOR toolbox. Similar to that, we have in IDEA project POWERPOOR toolbox, because it's something that is really useful when you are doing energy audit. And as I said, in city of Zagreb, then we have this really good project going on energy audit and households. We have this targeted 10 houses each year of the households, and we are giving them energy boxes. Later, my other colleague will explain what is energy boxes. And this is something that we have give people to better up their energy efficiency in their homes. Now, what we have as an active project, we have this NPOR project, which is more energy poverty in private rented sector. It's unknown area, not only in Croatia, but also in Europe. So we are dealing mostly analysis on the field to see what is going on in the private rented sector, especially now with energy crisis. And PowerMed project is also a project that is active. It's also Horizon project. So in Slovenia, Croatia, Italy, Spain, France, Germany, Albania, and it's more on the gender issue. So a woman that are the ones that are dealing with paying the energy bills. And the Social Watt is the project of actually Croatian energy company that I mentioned that is paying in the state budget for energy watchers. And 2 weeks ago, we have this workshop of energy poverty where we present POWERPOOR and POWER project, and they were really interesting in the POWERPOOR toolbox because they create their own social watt tools, but they are not for the general public like POWERPOOR toolkit. It's more for the companies in energy. So this is something different. So if you are interested, maybe there you can also visit their tools. And the Engager project that was going on in Croatia, it's totally different thing. It's for the scientific researchers. So it's more on the science, especially science and energy poverty. And this project also finished in 2021. So this is for me. I go through all the best practices, policies. I mentioned some energy crisis that's going on because a lot of things change when we have done this presentation, not because of COVID, but also because of the energy crisis. So if there is a questions, I'm here.
Thank you very much, Anna-Marie. So I would suggest if there are questions to please type them in the chat to make sure that we also allow my colleague Edith Lakatos to present to you the role of energy poverty alleviation offices and something that so it's kind of a one-stop shop. It's almost like it, but also Housing Europe has some other experiences with one-stop shops, and this is something that we see being pushed forward more and more as an approach. So I see Edith is online. Yeah, maybe Edith, you could start loading your presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And in the meantime, if colleagues have questions to our three trainers, please drop them in the chat. Yeah, thanks for sharing the link, Anna-Marie. And then we can maybe take some at the end. Thank you.
Yes, so I will continue with some best practices that already the two other speakers started with a little bit, and I will just go forward on other aspects. So to continue, actually, I will present you some practical tips on how you can save energy. So I don't know if you also see this panel. It's a bit.
I see yeah, I see the presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I also see all the panel of the different tabs, so it's a bit disturbing. But yeah, no worries. Okay. So we were already talking about the standby appliances, I think, in this morning, and I just wanted to take with the second option is the draft proofing and reflective foils. So we know that there are all these little things that you can do to save energy. So this reflective foil is around a €20 investment. Maybe in the meantime, actually, it increased a little bit, but it is enough for 3 or 4 windows, and the payback period is 1 year. So it is quite a good little tip that you can do while you are not able to insulate the facade. The other tip could be to change your bulbs. So as the little icon shows, if you buy 2 LED bulbs of €14, you will save an amazing amount of energy that you can actually see here. So you see the difference between the traditional bulb. Voila. Going to the appliances. So we mentioned that this standby option could be switched off, but going further, you should also check the different labels that you see on your appliance. So basically, in this icon, you see what you should look when you purchase a new product. So you have the QR code that gives you information, and then the scale of energy efficiency. And you also see information about the annual energy consumption on the label. So it's important to check without you invest in a new appliance. And the other option, another tip that could be very useful is this water saving device. So you see that there is a 10 cubic meter potential saving compared to a normal tap if you use that. I actually forgot to mention that these are examples based on the calculation on a family house with 100 meters square. But in any case, you save energy with all these tips. Just the number would change a little bit if it's smaller or bigger, your space. So in terms of heating, some practical tips. Some of you might know, some of you might not know. So you should, when you're looking in the furnace, you should choose one what fits the size of your room, and you should also check the air intake and check that it is actually closed, and so you avoid the heat loss through the chimney. Very important with the wood heating that you should avoid the gas leakage into the living space. And very importantly, the wood should be dry enough to be used as a fuel. So some people forget that if you just cut the wood yesterday, it's not possible to use it right now. Then important tip also is that you should inspect regularly your chimney and yeah, to see what kind of energy mix you can use. So using the wood, but also complementing with radiator if possible. In terms of gas and central heating, you could actually, if you have a thermostat, you can stop the heating in unused rooms, for example, and you could insulate hot water piping if possible. And of course, also regular inspection of the system is key. I'll try to change it. Yeah. So in terms of wood heating, these are just a few tips on how to put your furnace, how you set up the fire. But I guess this basic is known by everyone. So some understanding about what the metering of the wood. So wood is metered in a cubic meter or spatial meter, and when you're buying, most of the time spatial meter is used. So one spatial meter of wood is 0.7 meter cube, depending on the cutting shape. So as I mentioned, you should make sure when you use wood that it is properly dried. So there is less than 20% humidity in it. And you should also check the storage of the wood. So it should be exposed to wind and sun, but it should be protected from the rain and the snow, and it should be separated from the ground. So some practical tips about electricity. I think it's available in all the countries to use cheaper, so night electricity tariffs for heating. You can also use socket timers to heat only rooms that are in use and in different parts of the day, and use insulation and reflective pads. So I just mentioned the first tip I mentioned was the reflective pads between the heating element and the wall. So if you're not able to insulate your building, reflective pads is already something that you can do. In terms of sanitary hot water, also the same tip goes here to use night electricity and to limit the water heat temperature. So it should be around 60 degrees and not above that. But you should also pay attention that it's not too low because it should prevent the growth of special bacteria that would be dangerous for the human. So if the water heater is poorly insulated, you should also consider additional insulation. And you should check how the water heater could match the needs of the household. So you should choose a heater which is fitting exactly the size of the household. So if it is larger, then you are using much more energy than you would need. It goes without saying that taking a shower instead of a bath is saving a lot of energy. And also remove the lime scale from electric heating elements will increase efficiency. So in terms of insulation and building envelope, I already mentioned the reflective pads with insulation that you can use. You can also use rubber seals on doors and windows if you have this unwanted airflow. This is actually a €20 maximum investment and can improve very much the comfort, the indoor comfort. You can also use the window blinds for passive energy. So you can close the blinds, for example, during the night to reduce the heat loss and open the blinds to allow the sun to warm up the rooms. So now, for example, here in Belgium, we have a lot of sun, so we don't even need to heat, but it is also, I guess, because of climate change. So we are 20 degrees outside, which is quite unusual in October. But yeah, we use the natural sunlight and it actually warms up the rooms actually. So we don't need to use any heating. So you should also look for mold and damp walls to see where the cold spots will be, and maybe you can think about some additional tips, some additional insulation around these spots. And also, I mean, these mold parts are also important to identify because it can be dangerous for the health of the people living there. And the last tip is that you can also use carpets to reduce the heat loss through the floors. In terms of home appliances, we already looked at the energy class that you can check on the label when you buy this appliance. In terms of refrigerators and freezers, maybe it's an important information that you should defrost the fridge regularly, and you should keep the fridge from other sources away, and you should leave enough space behind them to allow the heat rejection. You should set your fridge between 4 and -18. So 4 degrees for the refrigerator, I think, is the lowest point suggested by the engineers, and the refrigerator, which is -18 degrees for the freezers. So I guess that this is the correct one, and then if not, then please correct me if you are an engineer. So other tips include using laundry washing machines and dryers during low electricity tariff periods, or you can actually use just your outside parts, so natural drying instead of using machines, if it's possible. And when you wash your clothes, you can also use a lower temperature to wash them. 30 degrees or 40 degrees makes it. It's very possible. You can also keep pot lids on when cooking to reduce required energy, and it's also maybe interesting information for you that induction stoves are more efficient than electric ones. It also goes without saying that you should shut down electronic devices when they are not in use. So it's recommended to avoid the standby mode. In terms of lighting, we were talking about the LED lights, and also some other tips include turning off lights in unoccupied rooms, using natural light when it's possible, and correct light fixtures. So where you place your lamp can actually reduce the power required to light your room. So think about where you will put your lamps. And this last slide actually is about some electricity utility bills and how you can read it. I will actually skip this because it is about Croatia, and I think in all countries, every country is different. Yeah, I will leave it here, and let me know if you have questions about the practical tips. And I have also engineers here, so you guys help me, I guess, if there is a very specific question. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Edith. Actually, we had in the morning, Eleni showed a Greek energy bill, and she supported it with that. And maybe if there are some particular questions on Croatia, I don't think that besides Anne-Marie, who is our trainer, that we have a participant from Croatia today. But if there are some specific questions here, maybe she can answer them. But in the meantime, we've got two questions from Agnese, or Agnes, I don't know how we pronounce in Italian that name. She comes from Agnese.
Agnese is right.
Super. From the Alliance Against Energy Poverty, that tackles energy poverty, and she has two questions. But that is to our trainers. So what would you suggest when there are old design lamps for which there are no economic alternatives to LED? So that is maybe, some sort of chandelier that is very, very special and maybe a little bit, maybe beautiful, but not very energy efficient. That's what I understand. And the second question also from her is, what do we suggest for people who are renting and who might not have enough control on their home? So for instance, when a window needs to be changed, or when again, changing the lighting is not really an option. Tricky one, especially the second one.
I think that I can answer to the second one because it's connected to the NPOR project, private sector. So gathering data on people for rent, it's a tricky one. And this is why there is 8 or 7 pilot countries in this project, and each of us decide how we are going to collect data. And in Croatia, we are collecting through the national survey that we developed through the other projects like Empowerment and one project that's called Metar. And we are using it on city of Zagreb, so capital city. It's a really huge area. And what we are asking them under the question of their ownership of their household. So if they are owner, if they are renting, or in Croatia, we have this special case, there is 2 or 3 families living in the same household using same dwelling, but they are separate entities like extended families. So I'm not sure, maybe in Greece it's something also, Italy, I see the names that probably are from that country, is the same, like it's more like Balkan, Southeast Europe, and this is how we are gathering data. And actually we are using POWERPOOR toolkit to, when we visit 200 households in city of Križevci, it's nearby Zagreb. In POWERPOOR toolkit, questions about ownership of the house is not implemented, but we ask them in the households if they are owners or tenants, and the ones that say that they are tenants, we extract data and we're going to analyze for NPOR project. This is like we are combination of few other project empowerment, the empowerment project that I present in Zadar County. We are also using similar survey as national survey, and this is how we are going to gather data because there is not existing data. And for the implementation of the measures, of course, the tenants could not change anything in their household. This is why we have energy boxes. And our partner from Netherlands is using energy boxes, but edit present as a small measure, changing the light bulbs, maybe putting the reflective aluminium foil under your radiator and something like that. This is only the energy efficiency for them. It's small measures. And of course, the initiative maybe to landlords to be the ones to renovate their house, but not in the way that they increase the rent. This is the problem that could be.
Indeed, that's a very, very big, highlighted with a very big line, and something
Yes.
that I think Europe regularly calls for.
That split initiative between landlords and tenants, yeah.
Exactly, that's really, really key, and just that renovations don't lead to renovictions and people having to leave their homes.
But the data is something that we need to have it, and we are using POWERPOOR and PowerMed, all the other projects, especially for Croatia, to gather data.
Okay, to maybe Eleftheria, Edith, would you like to add something to that? Something on your side?
No, unfortunately, I don't know the technical details of the lamps. So yeah, I will rely on engineers on this one.
Yeah, for the old design lamps, it's more in the cultural heritage. So if there is a grant scheme from the government to help those people, it could be like we do have something similar in Croatia when we are having public calls for renovation. We have public calls for renovation of house multi-apartment. It's mostly multi-apartment buildings that are cultural heritage, and they need to have financial help for them to change maybe those type of old lamps. It's hard to put them pressure only on the owners of the households that have that kind of lamps.
Yeah, so yeah.
Or we could suggest other measures such as PV installation, or to try to cover those extra kilowatt hours in a sustainable way.
Yeah, yeah, and also with PV, I guess we have a certain kind of leverage you have to maintain again the cultural inheritance. But also, given that the question comes from Italy, I guess that this is something that comes back very often there. So raising awareness that we need to, in a way, keep homes as they look culturally, but we also need to look forward and to adapt to the current challenges. Okay, so we took 8 minutes from the next module, but thanks very much to that Girl Power module. Thank you very much to the three of you, and still thanks Nines for the questions. So we'll continue with something very important, and that is the finance. So we mentioned that every module, are there any potential schemes and what could possibly be used? So Oliver Garda is from the European Crowdfunding Network, and he's one of the partners in POWERPOOR, advising on innovative finance and what can be done. So Oliver, I will not take more time from you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Diana. Yes, welcome. So my name is Oliver Geider from the European Crowdfunding Network. I have a slide deck here. It's still 96 slides, so I don't want to show them to you, not in full. When we talk about finance, you hear it potentially from the name of our organization. We are more focused on crowdfunding, so accessing finance or let's say support, could be donations as well, through internet portals. But there's of course also other possibilities to raise financing for certain energy installations, other than banks and so on, which we exclude here, but for example, cooperatives. So these are two things I want to just outline. I feel much happier to talk about crowdfunding, but I will still also speak a bit about the cooperatives. And then the POWERPOOR project has a specific website. It's called the POWERPOOR Fund, where we have a bit more information that you can look up to. I share the link where you can also read into and find other links. If you have questions at any time, or I speak too fast or too not loud enough, please let me know. I think you can all shout. I will try to share the screen now. So let's see if I manage. That looks good.
Yeah, it's loading, I think. There you go.
So, and if I now make it into a presentation. Can you tell me if you see the...
It was in presentation mode just a second ago. So maybe if you go back to...
it was in presentation mode, that is.
Yes, maybe. Yes. Maybe you have 2 screens, so that's why it's...
3 screens, yes. 3 screens.
3 screens, okay.
Yes. Okay, so if you say this is in presentation mode for you...
No, it was before, and now it's not.
What? It was before? So you see, okay, well, I don't know. And I know what I can do. Well,
you just need to put it on full screen on the screen that you're sharing.
I have to, there's a display settings. Is this better? No.
It has not changed. Maybe you need to just drag the presentation to the screen that you're sharing.
Maybe it's a sign I shouldn't show this. Let's see. What do you see now?
No change, unfortunately.
You still have no change. That is...
Not on my side. No.
It's F4 or F6, the full screen. Maybe you can try that.
Yeah, that's what I did already before.
Okay.
And you still don't have this screen. No, okay. So look, then it's easy. A question of...
Perfect. Good. We have it.
You have it? No.
Yes. Yes. No, yes.
Okay. I don't ask why. Let's stay where we are. So very quickly, because it's a lot of slides and a lot of them are probably redundant. So we move through here quite quickly. But what do we really want to think about here is collective actions. So not individual actions, not one household trying to improve their energy bills. It's a collective action that has, of course, to do with ownership of buildings or ownership of apartments, of access to certain rights that we cannot solve for any individual possibility. So here you need to think along a bit. Let's think about collective innovative actions. So a community comes together, and then what is this roughly? You probably know this anyway. So how can crowdfunding help? I just outlined what crowdfunding is very quickly. We have a few examples. We can focus on one. And then also cooperatives, collective energy initiatives. How can cooperatives help there? That, again, really depends on national law, of course. And then our Power Fund tool. A few takeaways. We also have training in here. I'm probably not going to do this. So let's see which next slide we can go. Let's kind of discuss what a collective innovative action is, but I assume you all know it, so I don't have to spend too much time on here. It's basically collecting needs of a number of people or even organizations and pooling the resources in order to have greater negotiation power or being able to address financial needs in a joint approach. So normally that is asking your friends or your family, can you give me some money? Can you lend me money? Can you, put a bit on top of it? And then if you expand this and go beyond friends and family, it might be neighbors, it might be organizations within your community that could all come jointly together. And here you could think of an energy community that shares renewable energy installations, or that shares the cost of energy efficiency applications that you want to jointly implement. So clearly we talk about the right-hand side on the screen there, the community, where it is more than just asking a few friends. Usually that would bring it also higher cost of the activities that you want to do. So why do we want to do this, or why may people think that they should join the forces? They want to gain access to affordable energy. They may want to tackle certain issues such as access to energy, or for some people might even be energy poverty. They might want to have a better negotiation power, or reduce certain costs. And of course, they could find new sources of electricity depending on local law, through most likely a solar panel installation, but it can be other things as well, of course. We in theory differentiate between energy communities and energy cooperatives. Cooperative has, of course, a legal structure behind there. Again, depends on national law. In some countries, this works better than in others. But what we really want to talk about is, of course, how do we finance a community? How can we raise money for a collective action of individual needs that are pooled together? So we want to see here that these communities have a common goal, that they will address it in a joint action. And so these actions would help, maybe share upfront cost or reduce upfront cost, because everyone in the community, will buy the same service. We think about individuals that wouldn't be able to finance this transaction on their own, but being pooled together, maybe also with others, it becomes a possibility for them to also participate in this. So communities here have the possibility to be inclusive of those that otherwise may not be able on their own to address, energy efficiency needs, or renewable energy investments, or even energy, in the most basic form, access to it. We think that by using communities, we can lower installation costs, potentially even negotiate about supply, and in theory increase the revenues or the money left by within the communities for other purchases. It could also, of course, involve energy communities or households that are not on the grid, so they don't have access to the provision of electricity through the utility companies, because they are very rural or local, remotely located. So here again, coming together could help to finance the installation of alternative energy consumption needs. And then, of course, I mentioned already, combining the buying power to purchase energy can, in theory, help a better price. For retail users, maybe not, but it's I think it depends again on the situation you're in. So looking at this, once we have a community, a group of people or organizations, and they have a defined need of actions that they want to do, how can we finance this? We start with crowdfunding. So I'll just, we'll talk a bit about what it is and how to set it up. A campaigner will skim through a bit. I want to show a bit more about what crowdfunding really is. So crowdfunding, and here we call it community finance, is basically gathering funding for an idea, a project. In this case, let's say, to improve access to energy for a community or for individuals within a community. And when we talk about crowdfunding, then this happens on the internet through a dedicated website, not dissimilar to eBay, where an offer is being made for, or a call for funds is being made to ask for either support or financial contributions for a specific project. So this happens in form of an open call to raise funds. Because it's on the internet and it's public, it's basically accessible to everyone who has access to the internet. Of course, not everyone will access it, but the possibility is there, therefore also to promote it widely. Crowdfunding platforms are internet service providers or service providers on the internet that have a specialized website that is dedicated in helping project owners to structure their funding calls and to present them to an audience that already pre-exists on the platform, but that also the project owners can mobilize themselves. And there's, we will see this later, there's different types of crowdfunding where the benefits can be tangible or intangible, financial. But when we talk about crowdfunding, we always talk about a financial contribution, so money flows in one direction. The very simplified setup is you have the person that promotes the idea on the platform, and the platform promotes the idea to the crowd that is already registered on the platform or that may be drawn from the promoter towards the platform. In reality, this is, of course, a little bit more complex. There is know your customer rules by law. There's payment service provision by law. There are fully licensed service providers that work on behalf of the platform to deliver these actions. In some countries, we have dedicated legislation for these service providers, no matter what type of crowdfunding they do. And Europe-wide, we have fairly far harmonized legal framework through a law that basically makes crowdfunding now part of the capital market union, sitting between banks and stock exchanges, just tiny, of course, for now. But so we have these three actors in here, with the platform linked to relevant professionally licensed service providers that ensure that the transaction is safe and in line with all the legal requirements that we need to have in any financial transaction. As I said, we have non-financial crowdfunding. It's a donation. It's just a donation done through the internet on a platform. There's nothing else. Somebody gives money and gets nothing back apart from, a good feeling. Or maybe a thank you email, and has no recourse to the person that they've given the money to. Usually these are fairly small. The sizes range, but it's 10,000 is already a big donation campaign, and obviously you need to have a really good cause to ask for a donation. They can be much bigger. For example, in the case of disaster relief or support the Ukrainian people, you will see relevant campaigns reaching higher numbers. But for a normal transaction where you say we're looking to financials or to support of donations for, say, an energy community, these will be much lower amounts. We have reward, which basically means the people that go to the crowdfunding platform to give money get a tangible return in form of a gift, a token, something of much lower value but perceived high. So again, it could be a coffee cup, it could be a signed postcard, it could be something like this. It's a kind of perk that costs the project owner a little money for a larger, if you want, financial contribution. This falls under commercial law and is treated like a sale of a product. eBay, I mentioned it. And if you don't like your coffee cup, you can send it back and demand that you get your money back. This is also fairly used in creative industries and cultural development and local and regional development. We see a lot of reward and donation-based crowdfunding. There's in every EU member state, or in most of them, is a platform that is quite well established, certainly in the larger markets. But there's also in smaller markets usually platforms for this. But realistically, the amount of money you can raise is limited. But for, let's say, supporting an energy community that maybe has no access to the electricity grid, this could be certainly an interesting add-on, or to help an energy community that is poor or desperate. Again, this might be something that actually resonates with the citizens that live within the vicinity of their community and want to help. On the other side, we have financial services crowdfunding, fully regulated under EU law. Equity are investments into shares or similar financial structures in business. The legal term is then a tradable security, so a bond, a share, an option to rights within the business. Clearly, the underlying asset is a company, which is either a public company, so according to company law, or falls into the definitions of the European law for what makes an investable business here. For an energy community, that is already an effort to say we create a business that will run our interests, but it is possible. And then we have lending. It's a bank loan just here through the crowd. In crowd lending, there can be institutional investors also involved that then gives more liquidity to the funding platform, so the transaction can happen very fast. On some platforms, from application to payout, it's 2 days. The funding sizes differ. Under the new law, transactions of up to 5 million euros can be done by every project owner per year. Clearly, this is for businesses that have capital needs, that want to grow. But interestingly, and luckily, the European Commission and then also the lawmakers implemented the notion that non-transferable and illiquid assets can also be financed. A typical idea of an illiquid asset is a solar panel installation. It's not easily dividable into parts of ownership. This bit is mine and this is yours. So you have one installation and you have 100 owners. Not one little part belongs to somebody specific. And illiquid is, there's no market for this. You cannot just sell this, right? You can, of course, go around the neighborhood and say, who wants to buy this installation? You can also advertise it on eBay, but there's no market specifically for this where investments are being sold and bought, and then it becomes illiquid. And renewable energy installations, for example, qualify for here. You can't purchase them easily. You do this through a legal instrument. It's called a special purpose vehicle. So company is being created, very lean, that has no other function than receiving the money from the investors, and then gives it or pays with that the installation of the in this case solar panels. So here again, it's certainly interesting for larger installations, though don't be confused. A transaction on equity crowdfunding platforms is sometimes much smaller, 50,000 euros. Yeah, 5 million is the absolute maximum. The average today is much lower. Here it says 350. It depends really in which country you are, and then the levels might be different. And this will also be the same for the next 3 years. But as of now, under the new law, it doesn't matter anymore where a platform is located. It could be located in France, and you still could fund a project in Croatia on that platform with investors from Finland, if you like. This is being rolled out. We will see the first transactions next year. So here it becomes potentially quite interesting to look at this type of financing. Here again, just a short overview, and we have the donation with intangible benefits. So it's intrinsic. We have reward with combination of intrinsic and some tangible but not related things, returns. And then you have a loan, which is a plain vanilla classic loan as you would get in the bank. It might be differently structured here and there, it depends on your needs as well. And then, of course, the equity crowdfunding is the investment through, let's say, a financial security that can be sold again. So it's tradable, like on the stock exchange where you can sell stocks back and forth. That is also possible on crowdfunding. Why should anybody be doing this? It's a good question. A, there's an absolute lack of funding for small business or small projects like this. Banks usually don't like to give out small amounts. Certainly they have requirements to the person that wants to receive a loan, as in you need to be able to repay it, you need to secure it on an asset, you may have to take a mortgage on your house. Not necessarily something that we have handy when we talk about energy poverty. Funding times here are much shorter. You can get your money within 2 days at best. Let's say it takes a bit longer, it's less bureaucratic, it's digital, it's quick. It is not cheaper, but there is a cost to everything. Depending on the interest rates, I think we need to monitor. It might stay competitive with banking. For now, it's slightly more expensive on the loan side. And then the equity side, the cost of capital is not cheap, but it's roughly where a private investor like a venture capital fund would be, or a business angel, a little bit lower, but there's also less involvement from a crowdfunding platform. What else do we have here? You have, of course, by doing a crowdfunding campaign, you get an analysis just by doing it, by asking people of your idea and the positioning within the community. Whereas you might be convinced of your idea and your project, and that is exactly what you need to do. The rest of the people in the wider vicinity that could potentially be funders might not think so. But if it does, if it is successful, and if you can convince them, that of course strengthens your own network. You get feedback, you get additional support, and you can increase your activities. Might not be the most relevant part for a single energy community, but if you think about this, doing this repeatedly, by advising people, by helping them in order to get more and more people involved, this certainly has something. So how is it done? It's basically like running a business. You have to have an objective. You need to identify your target audience, and you need to set your funding target, which obviously relates clearly to your objective and your, if you want, business plan of how you get to whatever you want to deliver. The plan is as complicated as your idea, so that you need to work out. You need to identify the most appropriate type of crowdfunding. Most people want money for free, so they would say, I take a donation. But by most appropriate means, I mean as well, everybody wants to get the money for free, but not everybody gets it. You have to have a story that actually convinces people to give you money. And in most cases, the best story is we pay money back. By saving energy, we have more money available, and a part of this we can use to repay the loan. That is something that attracts quite a few of investors. They do something good, they have a social impact, they have an environmental impact, and yet they don't give away their money. It comes back in small amounts over time. You need to have a clear value proposition, which is of course also linked to the type of funding you use, and you need to be able to communicate and market this. Platforms will do this for you, but in most platforms you are also expected to mobilize your own network, which of course is what you want to do if you have an energy community and you want to position this within your neighborhood. It's basically, here we have the same, but you really need to be able to answer this, and you need to think about this like, this is a business. It's not just, oh, I get money for free. Where does the money come from? It's your own network, family, friends, and peers. Because they will support you if they like you. If you do a local media campaign or you get covered in the local news, you may reach interested people through this. you can focus on creating this kind of coverage, of course. You could involve local business if there is local businesses that have their roots in the community that want to support your activities. You will be able to potentially find some of them to also support you. You can reach people through affiliated communities or networks, or other business networks or other energy communities you know about. And of course, existing networks, for example, on the crowdfunding platform, depending on which one you choose or you work with, there's already registered users that skim through the offerings and every now and then invest. So here you have already investors that might be ready to join, or funders, depending on what type you do. And of course, investors you can identify yourself and bring there when it is about financial crowdfunding. There's also the possibility for equity investments to have a co-investor. So you could find a wealthy businessman that says, look, I like the idea, I pay half the amount if the rest comes from the crowdfunding. Yeah, that exists as well in potentially even all types of crowdfunding. Okay, we are coming a bit into the details of it, so I skim this, but you can look at the slides, we can send them around. And we can then maybe move on a little bit in a second. Just clearly, the model we discussed, but there's also the geographic coverage. There is platforms that have a very local focus, or a national focus, or regional focus. And with the new law for loans and investments, there will be pan-EU focus. First platforms are rolling out their operations into a number of member states, and some of these are big. Yes, and the biggest investment platforms have each transacted more than 2 billion euros. 2 billion is a really big amount, but of course that's not necessarily in your market. So here again, your cut is smaller. You need to be realistic. And then you have a focus as well. When you look at platforms, some are generalist, you find maybe everything, or they say, we support small and medium-sized businesses. An energy community could absolutely fall into this. You need to frame it right. You need to speak maybe with a platform. And then there is platforms that have a clear vertical focus, such as impact or renewable energy. So here you have a preformed investor network that looks at potentially exactly your type of campaigns. And they will be also pan-European. It might take a day longer, but this is going to happen. There's a cost attached to this. I already mentioned it. Different on every platform. You may have registration fees, you may have service fees, you may have success fees. Think of up to 10% for investment platforms. Can be cheaper, can be negotiated, can be more expensive, depending if there is additional services that you require. And on the lending platform, you have a fee that the platform takes from you, plus the interest to pay to repay the loan. Also varies on your own project and how you can repay it and the risk attached to it. The platform will calculate this, and then you can see if you can, adjust that a bit. But in total, somewhere between 5 and 10% is relevant. There are platforms for now in some markets, mostly in the northeast of Europe, that offer investors very high interest rates, 14, 20%. I would argue that it's very hard to find a business proposal that can offer that, and I don't think that's what we talk about here. So these platforms I would avoid if possible. Okay, I will skip everything about setting up the campaign, because we've done this already. Maybe just really short 3 little cases that we identified here. There's a location in Greece. It was a reward-based crowdfunding campaign. So they collected money and gave a little something back for solar panels. And they raised We see this here on the bottom, 35,000 euros from 1,161 backers. Lower energy bills were involved for the house, were the result for the involved households, saving a lot of money, and reduced dependency on oil. This is not bad. This is a nice situation where we had, energy poverty, in Greece after the crisis, and where this type of funding, somewhat giving or a donation campaign with small, tokens coming back, managed to do a little bit of impact. For projects like this, crowdfunding can be a really interesting solution on the reward side. And we have here another one in Spain. It's a lending campaign. So there was money being given to be repaid. They raised 49,000 euros from 56 backers. So you can see the individual investment is much higher than in the previous example where we had more than 1,000. So we had very small contributions, but many of them. So here a loan that needs to be repaid. So the principal of the loan, the full 49,600 need to be repaid plus interest over an agreed period of time and an agreed repayment structure. Could be every month X% interest and X% repayment. Could be every month X% interest and then a bullet payment at the end, depending on the structure. And we have impact, lower energy consumption for the households involved, and savings on the energy bill, plus reduced CO2 emissions. So here, financial structure. And here we had another one, which was a match funding campaign, where we had a total of 29,000 euros raised from 202 backers. And then we had 2 matchers that said we will pay 1,000 euros for every X number of investors or X money invested into the pot, plus 20,000 euros in kind. So this can also be that you collect money and then you get something on top. Solar panel manufacturer might say, if you raise money for 10 panels, I give you another 10 for free. So things like this can be negotiated. In theory, these matching works well with reward-based platforms, as long as the matcher is a public authority. It could very well work also with financial structures, but then it has to be an institution that can actually make investments. So that's a bank, investment fund, or a private company. So again, another one that is quite good. We have a bit more detail on this, but I will not go through this right now. Because we are having 15 minutes left, let's talk a bit about collective energy initiatives such as cooperatives. So we have, we already talked about energy communities in general. We have the overview here. There's different types, renewable energy communities or citizen energy communities. We can separate them out, but then interestingly, we find legal forms that these energy communities can have. I already mentioned limited liability companies or other type of fundable companies could be a solution for crowdfunding. When we talk about financial, so loans and equity investments, but for a reward structure, for example, you could also use foundation or an association or a non-profit. Even a trust could do this, and a partner, everyone can do this. So there's different legal possibilities to structure this depending on your needs. Crowdfunding can basically, for donations and reward, found all of these. If you can sell it, you will need a company structure that is investable, so minimum a limited liability company in most countries, or a publicly listed company or the relevant structure. in order to receive equity investment or loans from crowdfunding. Depends on country by country. Again, there is information within the regulatory framework, but a crowdfunding platform will know this. So let's focus a bit about energy cooperatives here, because they are basically a little bit like crowdfunding, just much older and not necessarily digital, right? So in energy cooperatives or in cooperatives, we have a clear structure. It depends on country to country. It's national law, so here nothing we can say here will be the same in any country. But you have a government structure that is based on democratic voting systems. You can become an owner or participant in the cooperative by buying into it. And then the surplus is given back to the members, the community, or to increase the activities. And it's not in order to maximize shareholder value as you might have it in a private company, which is why this is also frequently used, of course, for joint activities. Cooperative with energy communities makes potentially more sense than a commercial company. So we have a number of principles in here. It's open and voluntary membership, so you can, but you don't have to join. There's democratic control through the members. The member participate in the success. They may also have to give more money in need. The organization is independent, also independent from external influences. It's run by the members for the members, and it of course allows for the development of community, for the development of representation of the community's interests. It can engage in education and training both ways towards the community, but also outside, and it can of course better cooperate within the community, but also with external actors, because it has a different standing. There is a lot of information also on cooperatives we can see somewhere else. Why would you do this, and why does a cooperative might be a good solution? It creates accessibility under, let's say, a fair price. There usually a participation in a cooperative isn't bank breaking. It helps you to participate in the governance as within the community at equal rights. It helps to create solidarity within the community, so that not profit focus, nobody can benefit over the other one, and usually they are structured to be supportive. They're quite sustainable as long as the goal of the community remains, or the community adjusts to changes. It can live for a very long time, and it can conduct repeated actions and grow. So it can start in one location as a small energy community and with a cooperative, and it can expand way beyond and integrate more and more members. The financial autonomy is clear. It's based on the members' money, so you're not reliant on external investors that may have different expectations at some point or want to withdraw their money. It can also be a guarantor that the benefits remain and the interest remain linked to your organization, or to your location and your project. So depending on the country you are in, energy communities can be very well structured through cooperatives, but not in every country. Look at the cooperative law, or find out if there are cooperatives. We have some of them listed on our Power Fund tool. Just for example, here we have the case study of a cooperative with in France, where you have energy poverty in certain regions, and so here's a non-profit cooperative being set up called Enercoup. which has 2,500 members, and each pay into the cooperative as a fee about 36 euros per year. And so with these just under 100,000 euros investment, they can then, give money to renovate housing. And so being a member of this cooperative means also that you can benefit from this, and that, with a small amount of investment, your conditions, your energy efficiency within your own house might improve. So it clearly is in the interest of some people to use this. I have a few complex graphs here that I leave out. How do you set up an energy community is a little bit dissimilar to a crowdfunding campaign, because here you need to organize a group of people that wants to do this together. Whereas in crowdfunding, you do it, you structure the idea, and then you need people to come to give you money and help you turn the idea around. So here it's a clear community. We have the same goals. We work together. We create this together, and therefore jointly you will define your goals and you will choose your legal form. And if you do it all together, then potentially the cooperative is the solution. And then you will look for support and start your activities. In crowdfunding, the get organized is you or the founders of the community, and you make the decisions. You don't need to expand this beyond a too large area or a number of people. Okay. So I will leave the energy communities with this now. If you have questions afterwards, not an expert on cooperatives, but on crowdfunding a bit more, still please feel free to ask actions. What we have done here in PowerPoor is we have created this PowerFund website. There's a screenshot and some text. It explains basically energy communities, how they can get funded. It gives some relevant tips on how to structure these things, how to go about it. It gives you links on where to go. Just as an example, it helps you, with the things we discussed here shortly. It gives you a bit more information on how to join a community or how to create one. And it's somewhat interactive, so please feel free to play around it. There you will also find some examples of crowdfunding platforms that do specifically energy investment. 20, and you find a number of energy communities that have been created and they're listed there. Here's the website, powerfund.powerpoor.epu.ntua.gr for reasons of how it's being hosted. What are the key takeaways from all this? Citizen participation can be very, very influential in creating energy in innovation actions. Communities are often stronger than individual actors, especially where capital isn't available. So pooling interest and capital here can really be a change maker. Crowdfunding can support collective energy initiatives if they are structured rightly and if they address the need of the financial, givers, the funders, and so can therefore improve the conditions and accessibility of energy communities. But cooperatives can do this as well and may have a more long-term vision in developing a community solution. Cooperatives also can do crowdfunding, beyond their membership, but that needs to be then again discussed within the structure. As long as there's donations or reward, there's nothing that would keep a cooperative from raising funds. And they are, well, I don't know if they're a good alternative, but there certainly are an alternative to individual and traditional funding methods, basically because incumbent financial service players don't deal with small money. And neither banks really like to do this, nor private investors. And once you go to the level of individual private investors, you lose all professionalism potentially, because you rely on an individual and there's no regulatory framework that can protect you. Whereas with crowdfunding, it's fully regulated under EU law, just as banks are. So you have a lot of recourse, you have a lot of rights, both as a project owner and as an investor. You also have responsibilities and duties, of course. We have a lot more stuff you can read up and go through. We have the PowerFund tool. Here's an easier URL for you, powerfund.eu. We have the library at POWERPOOR.eu, and so on and so forth. That's my short presentation. Do you have any questions at this point?
That might be something new in terms of crowdfunding and some of the points. Do we have some first reactions to what can be done? Have any of you had experience with accessing such financing schemes, or maybe any other type of? We also mentioned cooperatives. Maybe some of you have experience with energy cooperatives.
Nobody has.
Maybe I can speak for a short example I know. As I'm working for social housing providers, it may be complicated for me now to talk about crowdfunding, but regarding energy community, in fact, my company is currently testing an energy community for short scale on 1 buildings. And we are currently trying to incorporate more and more of the residents. And we know that it's an important part, because later when we will leave them the project with a photovoltaic panel and everything, it will be their job to do. But for now, what we observe is that it's complicated sometimes to sensibilize them in order to say it can be interesting for you, take the key, because it will be yours later. So it may be more, and also, sorry, I did not present myself. I'm Marinès Morel, and I'm working for Partenaire Habitat, which is a social housing provider in France.
Maybe here, a really interesting point about France and crowdfunding. In France, the French government a few years ago has really caught on the idea of citizens' participation in renewable energy, and has basically damned every large developer to involve local communities. That means either a cooperative or crowdfunding, in order to gain certain tax benefits and also sometimes even the right to do something. And that has led to, I'd say, a growth in the market, and to a certain degree a professionalization. Two of the crowdfunding platforms in France that are focused on renewable energy. One is fully owned by one of the biggest banks in France, and the other one is partially owned by another bank. So crowdfunding, as we all remember, if it was 10 years ago, Kickstarter or whatever, some crazy shit, has moved a long way from there. The crazy stuff still exists, but there is a real professional financial market in some countries and in some platforms, and that has been now properly framed in the law. You should expect to hear much more about this, and I think there should be really interesting opportunities lying ahead. There is another platform in the Netherlands that has received a 1 million operational investment from the EIB, because they support impact-focused developments, and they want to test this further. There's in total 3 platforms across Europe that were funded by the EIB on this level. And the Dutch platform also manages a venture capital fund and manages and administrates government funds in renewable energy on local level. So there's relevant teams, there's relevant people behind, not all, but some of these platforms. And I think for some of these energy communities, there is a real opportunity to tap into funds here and get access to new clients and you know, support that there wasn't before. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we see it, yeah, indeed. That's why we also included it in POWERPOOR, because it's maybe something that we, yeah, as you say, we associate with what was before Kickstarter and people trying to do things, but it can be a way more developed model than what we would imagine. Okay, so we'll leave that part of the training here, and of course I know that those slides are really almost 100 slides that you have, Oliver, so obviously we'll share those, and in the test itself we touch upon just on some of the main points that we have mentioned, and that will all be shared. So we'll then move on with the last panel, which is the last module, which is focusing on the role of cities. And here we have two ICLEI colleagues, that is Daniela and Arthur, with one camera. Excellent. Okay, so I like that. Nice to see you both. And it's very important. I mean, really, municipalities are one of the main target audiences of POWERPOOR. So it is great to see you. And we've had some questions. I think that was coming from Hungary and from Attila, saying, does this mean that we really can go and speak to municipalities and approach them about what can be done? Yes, the answer is yes. And I think that ICLEI has the best knowledge on how that can be done in the best way, working with the Covenant of Mayors, engaging the project with different sorts of initiatives. So last 1 hour, and yeah, please go ahead. Is everything okay, Daniela? You're on mute for the moment on my side.
I think your mic is muted. Okay.
Yes, now I am. Can you see us? Can you see the screen now?
We see you both, and we just need to have the slides in presentation mode.
Perfect. Is that now
yes,
good?
That's perfect. That's perfect. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Diana, and thank you very much to our shortly new to become our trainers. Thank you very much for your patience, and also I know that you've been all day in a session. We are probably a little tired of so much being in front of a screen, but Arthur and myself, we guarantee that we are going to give you some interesting information about the role of cities in all this energy poverty framework and how the POWERPOOR projects and the POWERPOOR tools that you have heard fit into the local agenda. So as Diana said, we are ICLEI, we are partners of the POWERPOOR project. My name is Daniela Torres. Together with my colleague Arthur, we work in the Sustainable Resources, Climate and Resilience team of ICLEI, following issues on sustainable energy, climate action, and specifically Arthur is our expert on energy community. So we are happy to be here. So now in the module that, as Diana said, this is going to be shared with you, so you will have all these modules and the information. So we are going to do first, I will do a very fast introduction of energy poverty in cities and how it fits into the sustainable energy and climate action planning processes of local government, whether your city or the city beside you. And then Arthur is going to cover the second part of the session, which is focusing more on the energy poverty guidebook, social innovation tools, and energy poverty alleviation offices in cities. So I will provide more of the framework, and Arthur will go on the reality of things in the ground. So just to put us in context, also the goals of these modules is to help you understand the importance of energy poverty actions in the sustainable energy and climate action planning processes on the city, and also to identify climate and social innovation tools and methods to mainstream energy poverty in cities planning, okay? So, so going on the energy poverty challenges on a city levels, probably we may think that the issue of energy poverty is focused mainly in countries in the developing world or on specific countries here in Europe. But for us to know and reflect, this is an issue that is affecting all the cities in the world, because it depends on the district where there is a restricted access to modern sources of energy. We also have some cities that have restricted local energy sources. Also in some cities, we have citizens that are unable to pay energy bills, and this, as I said before, it doesn't depend on the city, it depends on the neighborhood, the household, the situation. And we also seen that in lots of cities of the world, there is a limited citizen engagement when we talk about energy communities initiatives targeting energy poverty. So of course, energy poverty is now more prominent in all cities of the world due to the energy crisis and the current situation in Ukraine. So we have to acknowledge that this is a global issue, but also reflected in all the agendas of municipalities worldwide. And of course, we know that there are like three main causes of energy poverty. Of course, we have the external things that are like the war or the climate crisis, but then internally there are some things that affect energy poverty. Of course, low incomes on a household level, also if the high energy costs do not allow households to pay for it. And of course, there's another issue, which is the poor thermal efficiency of the households. So in general, there is inefficiencies that do not allow citizens to have energy, how can I say, a safe and affordable energy supply. Of course, all these drivers are interrelated, and it's important to understand this from a social perspective too. But also we have to see these challenges as an opportunity, especially now for cities that have to deal with these issues now. We can also see it more from an opportunity side, where, well, of course, energy poverty products, apart from being for providing better sources of energy for citizens, they can also support the emissions reductions on a city level. Also, municipalities within energy poverty context, they can engage citizens to develop energy cooperatives, community products, as we heard this morning from our colleagues. They can also foster and identify new sustainable energy alternatives that could help reduce the costs of energy. Of course, finding new innovative energy finance alternatives like crowdfunded, like we heard a couple of minutes ago. And of course, it also can foster the development of new technologies and the adoption of new technologies on a city levels, like smart metering processes or new apps that could help citizens to understand their energy consumption, etc. So we can also see it from that perspective, and that is why during the last years, city networks like ICLEI, we've been working in order to foster this understanding of energy poverty on a local level. There's this very interesting quote that we like to mention here, is that local interventions, if they are well planned, can offer long-term solutions for households dealing with energy poverty. So we have to see energy poverty as how can I say, as a long-term issue, not to do just measures that can be implemented in very few months or so, but then they are not sustainable in time. So for this, of course, municipalities are in the center of this issue, and they have to cope with energy poverty on a day-to-day basis. This is mainly managed or handled by the social affairs departments of the city or social welfare affairs of the city, but now this issue is being more intense. So there's a planning document, and just for everybody to know that municipalities that are committed to climate action and sustainable energy development, they officially have to develop a sustainable energy and climate action plan. That is the tool we use, which we call it the CCAP, okay? Which allows them to integrate energy poverty component into their whole climate and sustainable energy strategy. This is a very important thing because also part of the work of POWERPOOR is to bring this message to municipalities and also for you trainers that are working with some municipalities in case that this planning document could be an enabler to foster energy poverty alleviation measures on a city level. So for that, also just for your information and for the ones that are not familiar, there is a global initiative and specifically a chapter here in Europe, which is called the European Covenant of Mayors, which is a movement of cities working to tackling climate change and energy action to secure better future for their citizens, okay? So here in Europe, the Covenant of Mayors is very strong. It's a very strong initiative. We have a lot of signatories, more than 10,000 signatories, meaning municipalities and regional governments that want to be more efficient. They want to bring climate action into the core of the activities. And the Covenant of Mayors is also located in 53 countries across Europe. So when we talk about the Covenant of Mayors, just to let you know that once the city decides to be part of the Covenant of Mayors, after 2 years, they have to develop this CCAP, this plan, this Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plan. And in this plan, they have to include also energy poverty alleviation actions, okay? So also just for you to know, in the last few years in Europe, we heard also in the first module today that there are several initiatives on an European level working on this. We know about the European Energy Poverty Advisory Hub that is working together with the Covenant of Mayors to mainstream energy poverty issues in local climate plans. So together with the EPA, the Covenant of Mayors is working to support municipalities in including energy poverty actions in their plans. So for this, there are like 2 ways that cities need to act. Of course, first to understand and assess energy poverty on their cities, to understand what are the energy poverty problems that they have, how the municipality is affected, which are the vulnerable groups that are facing energy poverty issues, and of course, designing these actions that can be included in the plan. Okay, and then we also know that in order to make this plan effective, we also need to monitor. So also when the city propose a CCAP, propose a plan, then after on a yearly basis, they have to understand and measure the impact of these measures. So in the last few months, the European Covenant of Mayors has been working on defining indicators that could monitor and report quantitative on energy poverty on a local level. So there have been several steps defined in order to build the CCAP and also to identify energy poverty actions. Here are some examples. Of course, you need to identify the measures. You need to then explore how these measures can be implemented in the different target groups, and of course then implement it, no? So we heard this morning from the different experiences and also from the other materials that there can be different ways of alleviating energy poverty. Of course, we have some actions that can be low-cost actions in our houses, or other that requires more equipment and more issues which are a little more expensive. So also on a municipal level, on a local level, this happens. There are some measures that can be done rapidly, but other measures that take a little more time. So cities in the CCAP, in this plan that they have to develop, they must, as I said before, identify several goals. They have to also define the actions and the indicators to measure this success or the implementation of energy poverty actions. So within the effort of the global covenant of the European Covenant of Mayors, there has been designed several indicators, specifically topical, one on climate, socioeconomic, facilities, mobility, policy and regulatory issues, and participation and awareness raising indicators that can help cities to assess the energy poverty status and actions on their cities. So here are the list of indicators. Of course, I will not go on it because, as I said before, you will have access to these slides, but you have to understand that if we develop any action on a local level, on a household, on a neighborhood, these activities, the results of these activities have to also be measured on a local level. So cities should track this on time in order to contribute to their different plans that they are having. So these indicators are designed, these indicators are there, are available for cities to track and to measure. So that is more or less in general. And of course, when cities decide to go forward with a sustainable energy and climate action plan, including energy poverty actions, cities are doing several things. These energy poverty actions vary from city to city, but in general, we have training and educational activities. We have energy efficiency measures, specifically in some cities neighbor. And of course, most of the cities are promoting the use of renewable energy also to alleviate energy poverty. So cities, depending on the city, depending on how strong the energy poverty problem is, cities are working on it. So we will know a little more about this shortly, but the message that we wanted to share with you, to our trainers, especially now that you will be going to the field or working in this field, is that it's very important that we work closely, or we understand also what our city is doing when we talk about energy poverty, so they can also support our activities, okay? So for that, of course, the POWERPOOR toolkit, all the tools that have been designed in the POWERPOOR process also have this flavor of the importance of seeing energy poverty issue as a city issue too, so we can then bring value for action to the cities that we work with. So I think that with that, I will close this part. As I told you, and I think that my colleagues already mentioned, is that we have developed the Energy Poverty Guidebook for Energy Planning. This is a document fostering energy poverty alleviation action on a local level. So this is available for local governments, so they can start this journey of energy poverty alleviation. So we have developed guidelines. We have includes guidelines for actions to identify vulnerable communities, and of course, strategies to include these actions in the CCAPs. Okay. So I think that with that is an introduction. As I said before, I don't want to take so much time, but I think that now, after this theory of how cities could bring solutions for energy poverty, I think that we need to go to the action part. So I don't know if the participants have any question. If not, then I will give the floor to my colleague Arthur. Diana, I cannot see now if there are some questions in the chat. I know that probably some of our trainers, the practitioners, see this a little more as a theoretical things, but I really encourage you to think that everything that we do on energy poverty, at the end, we are talking about a very important issue on a city level.
That's absolutely true. And I mean, we saw it because in each of the modules we'll see, okay, what the local authorities can do. It was somehow mentioned, are there any schemes available, support, who shall we reach out to? So I hope that there is no doubt on that point. I don't see any digital hands and no questions in the chat. Would someone like to raise a hand or immediately just jump in now before Arthur shares a little bit more on the second part of that module? Okay. All right. Shall we then go ahead, Arthur, and maybe we get our questions at the end? Also, I think last time when people posted directly on the chat worked well.
And Diana, also, if there's any question or any specific concern or the participants would like to know what their city they are doing, they can also drop us an email and we can find out if we have some ICLEI member, if the city is an ICLEI member, or we can share also the plans that the city may have if there's some interest from our trainers.
Yeah, very interesting. We have quite a few participants from Italy, from Portugal today. So if there are questions, I'm sure that ICLEI's network is well spread in these countries.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let's then continue, and then please, to participants, don't hesitate to participate in the chat.
Great, thanks so much, Diana and Daniela. Yeah, thanks for the introduction to this module, Daniela. So my role will now be actually building on what Daniela just presented, and as she said, going a bit more into detail into what cities specifically can do and are doing with regards to energy poverty mitigation, and really how all of these considerations that we're doing with regard to how this can be done in the city context, how we can think about cities as holistic systems that on a daily basis deal with a lot of different elements within the framework of their sustainable energy climate action planning, for instance. And obviously, how can you make the best of the many tools that cities have at their disposal to mitigate and alleviate energy poverty? That's something that I would like to kind of talk about a little bit now. I'll give a few examples. You see climate and social innovation tools here, and that's simply because a main part of this section is also to introduce you a little bit to some of the methodologies that we're using within the POWERPOOR project to facilitate this kind of co-creative processes with different stakeholders, and they lend themselves very much to discussing and tackling kind of energy poverty as part of as it being a issue to tackle within a great set of issues that cities generally have to tackle. So I will be talking about the Energy Poverty Guidebook very briefly. I will present these tools and I will give concrete examples, very concrete, I hope. Quickly, Energy Poverty Guidebook, of course, I mean, this will have been talked about earlier before, so I won't go into detail, but really take a look at this, because if you're working with a municipality, if you're in a municipality, and you would like to either pay more attention to energy poverty issues or really would like to show how municipalities can take steps to start mitigating energy poverty, this is a very useful guidebook. It's available on our website, and it clearly explains different tools that cities have at their disposal to mitigate energy poverty. Using, of course, the different POWERPOOR tools, which have been introduced earlier, but it bundles everything in a nice, consistent package. So this is really something you can put on somebody's table, essentially, over a coffee. So very much recommended you do that. It can be found on our website. So one of the things that is in the guidebook is energy poverty alleviation offices. And this is something that is getting increasingly more attention throughout Europe. It's this idea that cities are very well positioned, of course, to be kind of the first instance when it comes to citizens who are dealing with high energy prices. And that is something that is extremely, extremely increased in importance over the course of the last months, obviously. And we're really seeing that cities, you know, of course, here are on the forefront of engaging with citizens. So what are these offices? These offices essentially should serve as a one-stop shop for citizens and directly support them in case they have issues with energy poverty or being able to pay their electricity bill, essentially. They work with different energy mentors, which come from different fields, and there are different formats that are possible. So the office could work, for instance, and we would recommend that, for instance, that these offices are being made part of the municipal structures. And I will talk about a few cases where this is already the case. And this really helps because you're then able to kind of work across departments within the municipality to understand how different kind of areas that municipalities are involved with have an effect on mitigating energy poverty. So one of these examples, and the guidebook explains quite well kind of what the steps would be to set such an office up. One of a very nice example we always like to mention is in Barcelona, which is and they have energy advice points. And essentially, when a citizen is facing the issue of that essentially the electricity might be cut off because they're not able to pay, or the energy might be cut off because they might not be able to pay their electricity bill, the citizen has the opportunity to contact one of the city's several advice points, and the city then essentially calls up the utility and says, listen, this person has an issue with paying their bills, please don't cut off their supply, and this is then followed through. So it's really an optimization of energy supply bills, and citizens can also apply to a social discount for different appliances. They're also working with, I think, volunteers and have set up a job replacement program to incorporate different people to advise others on how to lower their electricity costs. In Germany, a very known example is the Stromspar check or energy savings check. It's run by Caritas, a German-wide organization. And the Association of German Energy Agencies. You see on the map that this is quite extensive. The idea is that these kind of energy savings checks, there are often being made part of a municipal structure. And in the end, it's the municipalities or the agencies, energy agencies, that are sending energy saving supporters to households. And these supporters are themselves long-term unemployed and have received training to help others to lower their energy bill. So it's really a way of actually, engaging people that have not had a job for long term and to train them also. So it's a bit of a win-win situation. At the moment, this concept is supported in about 120 German municipalities, and very importantly, it's integrated into the overall city's planning. In Germany, energy poverty is very much connected to social policy. So here, the cities have very much incorporated that as part of the social policy work. Now, I'd briefly like to introduce you to the idea of climate system innovation. And I mentioned already, cities are really these holistic systems where many different elements interconnect, and you have to ask yourself, what kind of effect does it have that cities deal with so many different elements, so many different stakeholders, and what kind of effect does that have on your success to mitigate energy poverty as much as possible? So this concept of climate systems innovation definitely means that it's a combination of technological and non-technological innovations that, if enacted together, maintain or improve the delivery of desired societal functions, while at the same time reducing the environmental impact. And that's something that you would like to do. And the idea is that you don't see problems as isolated. So you don't see energy poverty as just being an issue of high energy costs. It's also connected to other elements that might be affecting a person's well-being. So it's very important to consider, and cities often have a nice overview of that. Talking about the fact that all of these things are very cross-sectoral and that everything is very much interconnected. And at the same time, of course, and we'll skip this because we don't have the time, but it's very much connected to social policy, as I mentioned already. So there's this idea of social innovation. So it's the idea that it's a process of changing societal relationships and interactions between people in order to meet social challenges and problems. And of course, you can apply different social elements and social approaches to mitigate energy poverty. That includes including, for instance, people who suffer from energy poverty, to include them in programs that mitigate the situation. But it also explains about ways how you can actually reach out to them and how you can design programs that are inclusive and that are attractive to people who otherwise generally might not be extremely active or very visible kind of in day-to-day interaction with a city or in dialogue processes. Yeah, so this is really something that that's important to understand. There's a very strong societal component to tackling this problem as well. And cities, of course, have a strong focus with regard to engaging with citizenry. So it's important to apply this concept. One of the ways we have been doing this and are doing this within the framework of the POWERPOOR project is that we are developing these national energy poverty mitigation or alleviation roadmaps. And the idea here is that the national partners, by a certain time frame, they set themselves a certain time frame, they set themselves a certain vision, saying by 2030 or by 2050, they want to have a X% reduction of energy poverty. And of course, it's very important to set these targets. And then you need to get a lot of different stakeholders on board to be able to meet those targets and to be able to co-create certain actions. Now, we do in the POWERPOOR project, we do this on a national scale, so involving stakeholders from national ministries, from regional agencies, and from cities. Whereas in the city context itself, you can equally apply this methodology. So we call this we base this on the toolbox offered by Climate Click, a visual toolbox, climate systems innovation thinking really. And we have looked at two very interesting methodologies, which you really could consider applying. And we're now doing this hopefully relatively successfully in the different POWERPOOR countries. It's a very interactive process. One of them is called the Stakeholder Universe methodology. So here, essentially, you have a workshop with people from within your city, or people that's not only city administration, that can be energy agencies, that can be the local utility, that can be companies, that can be citizens themselves. And you try to map out the kind of interest of different stakeholders to contribute to mitigating energy poverty, but not only the interest, you're also trying to map their adaptability. So obviously a utility, an energy utility, or a large energy supplier that has been around the block for a long time has a more challenging time potentially to mitigate their everyday business practices, to come up with a business model, or to contribute to mitigating energy poverty in general. Whereas a small organization, a non-profit, or we heard about crowdfunding organizations, or even perhaps potentially the city itself, it depends a little bit on the city and the administration, how it's set up, might be more adaptable in its everyday practices to contribute to solving this problem. The idea is that you create this kind of universe and you try to map out connections also between different stakeholders. You try to understand how is the city connected to the utility, how is the utility connected to the company, and how is the utility connected, or the city connected to the citizens? How are the citizens connected to other supporting organizations? And by doing this, you get a very comprehensive picture on how all these different stakeholders have an effect on energy poverty mitigation policy, and how you could potentially have certain nudges and changes. So once you have done that, there's another interesting thing. You have gathered all the different stakeholders, and now within your city context, you have to not only have your vision, so you have your vision, say by 2030, you want to have X% reduction of energy poverty. You want to create concrete actions. You want to know what exactly are the steps that the city needs to take on a yearly basis. And you can attach certain indicators to this in order to mitigate energy poverty. So there's a tool called the Future Radar, which we've been using in the framework of the POWERPOOR project. It's quite interesting. It's very co-creative. I won't go here into detail, but you can, of course, look at these slides. It's all explained. And it links to the actual visual toolbox of Climate Kick. You can go through the methodology and apply it in your own context. We very much recommend you do so. So on the cone on the left, in the picture here, you will see essentially where you kind of do a backcasting exercise. So you say, okay, by 2030, you want to have X% reduction of energy poverty. You get your stakeholders together and you ask them to envision different changes in society that need to happen in order for this to become a reality. Yeah. So these are not necessarily political changes, that can be changes with regard to overall energy costs, or more citizens being aware of energy matters, or these kind of larger social technical changes. And you can think, okay, by when would this ideally be reached? Or everybody has a good understanding what energy poverty is, or something like that. And then you can try to indicate sort of what's the feasibility and what's the impact of these different changes. Then having done that, you then go to the other cone, which is about co-creating specific actions within the city, specific policy actions in order to meet and to implement those changes. Again, I won't go into the detail here, but the idea is that you have concrete actions will be carried out on a yearly basis, and you try to map them together with your stakeholders within the city, or within the greater sort of, if you want to do a living lab, you do a living lab. So within the greater group that you bring to the table, and you try to map out, okay, what is the actions with the most highest impact and the actions with the minimum effort. And you try to map that out using green dots. And this gives you a nice overview of different actions that can be fed into a city-based or a city roadmap for mitigating energy poverty. And it will be a roadmap that is co-created with different stakeholders. So it's owned by not only the city administration, but it's owned by many different stakeholders. And this way you can create an effective, integrative strategy to mitigate energy poverty within your city context. So that's the kind of the idea here. We heard about energy communities and about crowdfunding. I think I wanted to just use a few minutes to actually touch on that from a city perspective as well. Why? Because it's a very holistic thing also. You know, energy communities and crowdfunding, they are not, it's not only about gathering finance. It's about reaching out to people who might be interested in investing, but also reaching out to people who are struggling for energy poverty, or who might not necessarily be aware that opportunities like these are available, that energy communities can contribute to mitigating the energy poverty situation. And here municipalities have a very strong role in facilitating that. So there's a nice example, for instance, of the municipality of Magliano Alpi in Italy. And you should know that in Italy, the national state, within the framework of the Recovery and Resilience Fund, is giving a lot of money to municipalities, I think under 5,000 inhabitants, to create renewable energy communities with an aim to not only produce renewable electricity, but also to mitigate people's energy bills or to reduce people's energy bills. So the specific example, it's located in a village, Magliano Alpi, in a small town, in a micro area of 8 apartment blocks. Oh, that's actually a mistake. This is not the one I wanted to show. That's a different text. Why is that happening? Sorry, this is the one. This is the other one was in Porto. We'll come back to that. This was in Italy, so the idea is that the city makes available public space for installation of PV panels. Citizens can jointly invest and can become part of the renewable energy community, and ultimately this results in a reduction of energy costs for participants. The municipality has provided smart metering and kind of data management systems to see, to allocate and control electricity flows between the different installations and the members of this energy community. And the municipality itself is a member of this renewable energy community, and is even engaging other surrounding municipalities to commit and to adapt comparable models. So why am I explaining this example? Because it explains very clearly what municipalities can do, and considering that energy communities could be one of the solutions that are listed in this roadmap and through this methodology that I just presented. Municipalities can take that and they can and this tool of energy communities, and they can actively support it. Now, how can they do it? So municipalities can accelerate renewable energy communities to mitigate energy poverty, for instance, by many different things. So first of all, they could make public space available. I gave this example already from the Italian case. And they can offer energy communities the opportunity to participate in public tenders. So that essentially means creating a tender for the installation of a PV plant or a wind plant, and allowing citizens, allowing different renewable energy producers to apply to this tender, and essentially set up the tender in a way that only those can participate who have certain social impact. So, for instance, where some of the money is actually actively being used to reduce people's energy bills, or the money is being used to pay for social activities within the city. They can raise awareness and share municipal staff and resources, as well as join the board of the community themselves to have a clear stake in the in the energy community, without necessarily being the overall largest financial stakeholder. So there's always the element of control, and it was already introduced in the previous module that there's these principles that sort of are related to the governance of an energy community, that ideally no stakeholder, even if it's a municipality, should have the ultimate kind of say. It should really be democratically controlled, ideally. Municipalities can set concrete targets for the promotion of energy communities and make them firm part of their climate and energy plans. That's how it relates again to what I've explained earlier with regard to how do you create plans, how do you set up specific activities as part of that. They can bring together different stakeholders and promote innovation. So, for instance, by doing an exercise such as one I presented, but also an exercise specifically around bringing actors together that set up an energy community, so local electricity companies or citizens. And they obviously have a huge interest to become a part of energy communities themselves. And they've got an interest because next to having a potential to mitigate energy poverty, energy communities have the potential to contribute to local grid flexibility and the resilience and local security of supply. So that's also something that's very much connected to this issue of energy poverty, especially in the current geopolitical climate. And last but not least, they can profit financially themselves through the generation of stable business tax revenues and access to renewable energy sources. And all of that, in the end, of course, can save costs for the municipality, but it can also save costs and protect vulnerable households specifically. And that's why it's so great. And this is actually why I now want to give an example. This is wrong in the title. I apologize for that. This should be an example from the city of Porto, here in Portugal. And here, this is in a case where it's located within a micro area of 8 apartment blocks. and a public school in Porto. So the idea here is that the electricity will be generated from different PV panels that are installed on the roofs and consumed within the community, and any excess will be sold to the grid. So there's certain remuneration here. So there's a business model that incentivizes both the sharing of electricity as well as the sharing, putting the overcapacity or the not used electricity into the grid and getting a remuneration for that. The idea is to involve up to 118 families as well as young consumers, very important also, because young consumers can also suffer from energy poverty, obviously. Plus, there's huge potential about like this collective energy consumption and production schemes to involve a younger audience generally. And this year is the European Year of Youth, and during Youth Day, for instance, there was a lot of attention to this. How can young people contribute to these kind of initiatives? The idea is, and this particular project is financed, I believe, within the framework of a European project. So within the 5 first years, and they have some money with that to within the 5 first years to provide electricity more or less free of charge to the members of the community. But after that, the ambition is that they do that at a lower rate than from traditional suppliers. And you do see some energy communities, especially in the current kind of situation with high energy prices, where essentially, even if you have a grid tariff at home, a green electricity tariff at home, because the electricity price is connected to the gas price or to fossil prices, essentially, because merit order effects and everything, how the electricity market works, the problem is that even if you have a green electricity tariff, you're still paying a lot of extra costs, and that can actually add to the problem of energy poverty. Whereas several energy communities or energy cooperatives that are now out there in Europe have a situation, and I could name a few examples from Belgium specifically, where they're able to supply their members at a lower rate than the market because they have to buy essentially less electricity from the market. So they're able to directly pass on the very low cost they have in terms of producing electricity to the members and to the end consumers. That's a clear win for energy communities, and it's a clear message that energy communities are, because of the non-profit nature, essentially, have a much more kind of intrinsic motivation to contribute to mitigating energy poverty, because their ultimate aim is not, profit, it's people. And in this particular case, the local authority is closely involved as they own and manage a large number of buildings. So here again, very clear case of how public authorities can support this. So if you know a municipality, or if you're working at a municipality and you've got a lot of public space, a lot of roofs available, and you've done some kind of solar cadastre or whatever, and you know what the potential is, why not consider making this accessible to your citizens? Because there are so many benefits, not least mitigating energy poverty. Yeah, the title is again wrong. I don't know what happened here. But again, this is 2 cases from Latvia. One in Latvia and one in Estonia. Just won't go too much into detail, but this is a very nice case of the connection between energy communities and building renovation. So in the case of in these 2 cases, kind of the homeowners associations, multi-apartment buildings act as an energy community and not necessarily a renewable energy community as defined by EU law, because the transition process isn't necessarily advanced enough in the countries. But there in those cases, they install kind of PV panels on these multi-apartment buildings, and the residents are able to benefit through rebates on their energy bills. It's very much supported by the municipality, but also by the regional government. And in the case of Tartu in Estonia, again, talking about target setting with regard to energy poverty, but also with regard to energy communities. These things are very much interconnected, obviously. The municipality of Tartu has established within the framework of their CCAP, within the framework of their climate and energy plan, concrete target, an objective target that 150 gigawatt hours of electricity consumption annually. That's for renewable electricity in general, and out of that 15 gigawatt hours need to come from apartment associations rooftops, which more or less in that case is a target for energy communities, because in this particular country, in this particular case, it's very attractive for homeowners associations to kind of bundle together, come together and collectively engage in these kind of initiatives. But there's also cases of this in other countries, Portugal, for instance. And in other countries is just now developing. So obviously this very much depends on how the legal framework and the regulatory framework within your respective member state, to what extent like the sharing of electricity, to what extent the collective self-consumption is actually possible. But in those cities, countries where it is, you see that these kind of models are really just starting to gain in interest and starting to become more profitable. Right, and I think that's it, more or less. A lot of information, I think, to take in. So thanks for listening, and also sorry for that information. Quick takeaways. So energy poverty actions are definitely integrated into CCAPs. There's a lot of value in doing that and having clear targets, clear actions to co-create these actions. And it's important that local governments are behind it. It's very important to use these methodologies such as these. You don't have to use necessarily only these methodologies, but it's important to have methodologies that enable bringing different people to the table to have co-created actions that can be integrated into a report. And of course, some of the elements that you can use here are the POWERPOOR tools. You can bring them to a table, to an interactive workshop, or to your city, and also take the guidebook with you and put this on someone's table and say, listen, you've got a problem with energy poverty. Here are a few examples and of how you can mitigate that, and let's do it together. So that's my presentation, further reading, and if any questions, happy to respond.
Thanks very much, Arthur. And I also think that if before cities would be thinking, oh, we might be too busy and we kind of, put that on pause, or we'll tackle it later on for multiple reasons. Maybe now it's really a good moment actually to really speak to officials, because the problem is very evident for everybody. Do we have questions? So first of all, thanks to the brave 20 people here who have been with us for 4.5 hours, I think, and if we don't count the break. So do we have some comments and questions to the colleagues from Italy? Okay, I hope you still have some energy. Maybe you have some, so I was mentioning, Daniela and Arthur at the beginning, that we have quite a few participants, so quite a few from Italy, a participant who was quite active from Hungary. I know that we have also people from Portugal, for instance. Latvia as well is in. So do you have something, I don't know, that is maybe targeting more that area, something that an example that you've seen of, let's say, plans integrated into CCAPs and some specific kind of movements in that direction? Does something springs to mind, or that's just out of the blue and something that you maybe need to check, or it's maybe a too complex question to answer just immediately?
Yeah, just since you mentioned these two particular countries, so I think Italy I've mentioned in length in my presentation, the specific example, and yeah, of course, I talk more from the energy community perspective, but I mean, in Italy at the moment, there's a lot of money available to develop these kind of solutions, specifically if you're in a small municipality. So that's really something to look at. Of course, it raises the question, what happens when these funds run out? So there's a certain risk that these kind of models, might not be able to maintain, to be created without having the kind of startup capital. So that's something to consider. Having said that, of course, there's a lot of projects developing in these countries in particular that I think are very worth to explore further. With regard to Hungary, something that comes to mind, just in general, something that I like to flag, it's the current situation, I think, regarding the promotion of these kind of initiatives. So I believe that there was supposed to be quite a lot of funding to be allocated at energy communities through the operational program, but now there is an issue with regard to the connection of new PV to the grid, if I'm not mistaken, which has a huge impact, obviously, on the national solar energy industry. So obviously, this has quite an impact also on the implementation of these kind of solutions. So of course, if you have municipalities very motivated and want to do these kind of activities, it's great. You're able to get the citizens together potentially, and you'll be able to get the startup capital together, but you're not able to connect your PV to the grid. That having said that, might be a reason to look into collective self-consumption rather, and then invest in batteries. But this all depends a little bit on to what extent that's economically feasible. But that's just a few thoughts that I have. I don't know what the very latest developments regarding that have been in that particular country. But I don't know, perhaps Daniela, someone else has some more other examples that they would like to raise. Or someone from the participants. Yeah.
I just want to reinforce, yes, Arthur, you are quite up to date. It was kind of last week's big bomb on the PV industry and people. Yes, and with the energy communities, I think there is kind of one starting. So I know them. There is a fortunate place in Budapest, which is an factory, so it has an independent internal electricity system, and one of the cooperatives is running a place there, and kind of they are forming this first energy community. So it's really interesting, and we try what we can. But you are right. Yes, they say that this PV ban is about the quality of the electricity network. So the capacity is not enough. So if many people are having PVs and the sun is shining, then it can cause trouble. So yes, years of not developing something finally gets into your way.
Yeah, it's indeed a very strange situation. If I understand correctly, it's also kind of very political, no? Because the renovation of the grid there is subject to, or as it's claimed, is subject to money coming from the Recovery and Resilience Fund, I believe. And now that's not happening because of political issues with on a very high level with Brussels. So that's what I understood. So that kind of raises the question, why it's not possible in those cases where the grid actually still can take additional connections. But yeah, indeed, it just goes to show how much kind of geopolitical factors and in general grid expansion, plays into whether these things are actually possible. Yeah.
Carlos, I see your camera is on. Is it because you'd like to ask a question?
No, thank you. I'm just listening, and now I don't have nothing to make a question. Thank you.
No worry. Just absorbing.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
Great. That's good.
I would be actually kind of interested to ask the participants here, like if you have any specific examples of municipalities that you work with where you know that they've really made tackling energy poverty a key kind of strategic priority at the moment, and to what could share any experience on how they do that on a daily basis, how they work with citizens, how they engage vulnerable citizens, because we're all very, very interested in these kinds of examples, and perhaps some of the people here have some personal experience.
Input from some of the cities, maybe? Does anyone have? I know, for instance, that in Bulgaria, but that's not at the city level, but at the national level, or the political situation is a bit unstable, but they really were looking at revising the energy poverty definition, for instance. But that was mostly referring to the first module, to make it a bit more kind of to enlarge than to reconsider more people, because we see that more and more people are falling into the energy poverty trap, especially in not so well renovated homes in Eastern Europe. But someone maybe have an example specifically on the city level?
Yeah, and probably I just come in just to let you know also that during the last few months specifically, we have seen that more municipalities are starting to work a little closely on identifying energy poverty actions, especially related to the, how can I say, because of the current energy crisis. No, so there's a lot of push from citizens that are seeing that their energy bill is rising like crazy. So more municipalities are starting to ask, and also to, how can I say, to trying to find more technical support from the different organizations in order to establish defined plans. So it's an emerging thing, but this is coming.
It is coming. Yes, and as you mentioned, I mean, as also Arthur mentioned, I think that also the recovery plans, many of them, I think, were foreseeing actions in this direction. So it's money that is there, but as you also mentioned, Daniela, it needs to be monitored, and we need to track what's actually happening on the ground and in reality.
Yeah.
I think this is maybe the first time that we're not completely rushing with Arthur speaking with 200 words a minute in that module. So this time is maybe the first time out of the 3 webinars that we really have a bit more time at the end. If people want to jump in with some questions, please ask in the chat, but I will in the meantime take the opportunity to just thank you all for taking the time to follow this training, and for Housing Europe, and for all of the trainers today, the different organizations. This was not just an opportunity to tick a box, but it was very it's a project that is very dear to our hearts, and especially we see how more and more relevant it becomes with the time. So what follows next, I had already mentioned here and there, but just to give you a little bit about the process of what's happening. So seeing more faces, nice to see you. As soon as we wrap up the call, I will send you the presentations. They might take some time to load and to be uploaded to servers, but then that will also come with a test. So when we say test, don't think of something overly complicated, but just some of the main points that we discussed today. It doesn't take more than 10-15 minutes. So it's digital, you can submit it, and once you submit it, then we'll have a look at the responses and come back to you with a personalized certificate that you can have, and also an invitation to you to add it to your LinkedIn profile. So we created a special certificate badge for professionals who would like to have it on their LinkedIn as a skill. We thought that is something nice to have. And really, this is when actually work is starting. So we'll be happy to keep in touch with you in the next months. The project is running for another year, but as well, we would like to keep actions also for beyond this duration, but at least until September next year. We are in full mode on, and also there will be quite a few inspiring events in different locations. There is also a goal to have to say who of the certified mentors and supporters are most kind of active on the ground, and to reward them in a way by inviting them to some of the events, to the cities that will be hosting those sessions. So some of the cities are most likely, we know Barcelona for sure, and another city maybe is Brussels, and another one is under confirmation. So quite a few of you, when registering, you've opted for receiving the newsletter. This is a newsletter that we send out every few months. So we will be receiving also news on how things are going on the ground, major outcomes, and also invitations to those events that we mentioned. And if you happen to be very active, please let us know, because that is how we'll be able to say bravo to those of you and invite you and to meet you in person, and so that you can share with us what you have been doing on the ground. That is in a nutshell what I wanted to share in terms of what is happening next. And also, if you have enjoyed the training, or if you know someone who might be interesting, we at Housing Europe are in charge of organizing 5 of those. Each time it's with the same material, and obviously we'll update as the situation is evolving very quickly, but it's more or less to 95% very similar. So if you know someone from your colleagues or your peers who might be interested in taking that training, don't hesitate to share, because there will be another 2 happening, one at the end of the year and another one at the beginning of 2023. And thanks once again very much to our trainers and to my colleague Abderrahim Khairi, who helped me with the recording, because my computer is apparently is very full and packed. So thanks very much, and let's stay in touch. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.